Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. It feels so weird sitting down and filming in front of the camera again because I did 12 days of Bookmas and I was filming so much for like 2 weeks, and then I took like a 2-week break and haven't filmed anything since. So this feels kind of weird to be sitting in front of the camera again. It is the time of the month again where I talk about the books that I read in the previous month. It is currently the 2nd of January, so I'm going to be telling you guys all the books that I read during December. I read a total of 9 books in December. I've got most of them here and then some of them were also novellas on my Kindle. So before getting into the books that I actually read during the month, I thought I would tell you guys all of my reading statistics for the month and the genre breakdown of these books. So as I said, I read a total of 9 books in December. I had one DNF in the month of December, which was A Merry Little Meet Cute by Julie Murphy and Sierra Simone. I had a lot of people tell me that I wouldn't like this book and that I'd probably DNF it, and it was actually like part of the books on my December TBR as well, which is a little bit disappointing, but I'm still going to count it as like a book read from that, I guess. In the month, I read a total of 2,534 pages. Out of the 6 books that were on my TBR, I ended up reading a total of 4 if you include A Merry Little Meet Cute. So I completed 3 of them and I tried to read a 4th one. So that is like the most successful TBR month I've ever had. Now onto the genre breakdown of the 9 books that I've read. I read 2 mystery/thrillers, 4 romance books, 1 general fiction book, and 2 fantasy books. Now that I've gone through all of that, let's get into the books in absolutely no particular order. Also, I am currently sick, or at least getting sick, so I sound very nasally. At least I sound it to myself. So if you guys can hear that, I apologize. I have been like this for like the past 3 days now, and it's just not getting any better, so I can't even wait till that's gone before filming this video. Starting off with this little like Christmas sort of novella that I read Everyone This Christmas Has a Secret by Benjamin Stevenson. This is literally probably around 200 pages. Like, it is a very short book, and there is like a few books that technically come before this one which I haven't actually read myself, and I feel like if I had have read those books first, I would have enjoyed this storyline a lot more because I would have already known these characters, whereas I did feel a little bit lost with the characters. I feel like I needed a little bit more backstory on them because there was definitely things mentioned that would have happened in the first few books. This is like a little Christmas mystery thriller, so it's actually like an advent calendar. So this is like the first page of the book, and pretty much the idea of this is that every single chapter, there's like 24 chapters, 1 for each day of the advent calendar, you get a clue into this murder that's taken place. And I didn't guess the ending of this book, to be honest. The clues are very minor. Maybe if you've read the rest of them, you'd be able to pick them up a little bit better, but I didn't get any of the clues. I'm not gonna lie, I did find this to be a little bit boring, and as I said, I think it's because I wasn't as connected to the characters as I could have been, but it was still a pretty decent book. I ended up giving it 3 stars. Then I read another Christmassy book, but this one I actually really loved, and that was Love Light Farms by B.K. Borison. The more I talk, the more congested I'm getting, so I apologize. But anyway, this is the first book as part of a little like interconnected romance series actually, so I'm glad that this is the first book of the series. Otherwise, again, I would have felt like I was reading it out of order, but it was the first, so it worked really well. This is following Stella and Luca, and Stella, she owns this like Christmas tree farm, but it's kind of like going under, like she's not really getting much business. So she ends up entering this contest from this famous influencer called Evelyn St. James, and pretty much the contest is that she is going to shout out a small business, but she actually lied in her application and she said that she's running the Christmas tree farm with her boyfriend, which she doesn't have. So she ends up having to fake date her guy best friend, and of course it turns into something a little more than that. I think this was so sweet. I read it in a couple of days. Like, it was so hard to put down, and when I wasn't reading, I found myself thinking about this book and thinking about the characters as I was like going through my day-to-day tasks. So I really liked this. I gave it 4.5 stars. Next book I read was a book that kind of put me out of my comfort zone a little bit. I can't say that I've really read anything like this before, and that is As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow by Zufla Gateau. I'm probably butchering that name, but I actually read this in a vlog. It was Booktubers Choose My Reads for a week, and it was Carrie Can Read that chose this book for me. And this is actually following a war that's happening in Syria. I believe it's considered the revolution. So it is following Salama or Salama, I'm not entirely sure how to say her name, and she's actually not technically a nurse, she's actually a pharmacist, but because there is so many injuries happening and so many surgeries that need to take place, she has to work in this hospital. This book was very hard hard to read. It was very, very emotional, and the things that happened at the end of the book I was not expecting at all. And I know there's also currently a lot of things happening in Syria, so this is like the perfect time to read this book if you wanted to pick this up. I also ended up giving this one 4.5 stars. I just think the writing is so beautiful. I don't know if this author has written anything else, but if they have, I'm definitely going to look and see what other books that I might be interested in, because I think their writing was just so perfect. Then another book I read because of the same vlog was Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. This is, I would consider this like a bit of a cozy fantasy. It's kind of considered like a Regency fantasy, I believe. This one is following Dora, who is cursed by this Fae man towards the beginning of the book, and the curse is pretty much that she's literally got zero emotions, so that's why it's called Half a Soul, because she's literally soulless. She hates this because people just think that she's like this cold-hearted person, where it's because she's got a curse, so she literally cannot feel anything. And that's where this magician comes along. His name is the Lord Sorcerer, and he discovers her condition and decides that he wants to help her. He is like going on a mission to figure out like how to counteract this curse. There is also like a meaning behind these like vintage scissors on the front cover of the book. I won't tell you guys what that meaning actually is, but I really, really like when the front covers of a book have like a specific meaning, and then when you're reading you're like, oh, like that's why that's on the cover. And yeah, as I said, like this was such a cute, cozy fantasy to read. I really, really liked this, and I have literally never seen anyone talk about the second book, but apparently there is a second book. It's called 10,000 Stitches, and by the sounds of it, I think it's going to be following like completely different characters. But I actually really, really loved this. I ended up giving this 4 stars, I believe, when I finished it. But honestly, I'd probably bump this up to like 4.5 as well. Like this was actually a really, really good reading month for me. Then I read the third book in the Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, which is All In. I actually technically listened to the audiobook for this one. I listened to it on Audible, and I, for some reason, thought that the audiobooks didn't exist for this series. I think it's because I tried to look for the second book in an audiobook like quite a few months back and could never find it. So I just didn't think that the third book would exist, but apparently it did. So that's why I listened to the audiobook for this one. I can't really talk about this too much, but pretty much the Natural series is following a group of teenagers who are helping the FBI because they have these special abilities. In particular, we're following the one main character. Her name is Cassie. I honestly just completely forgot, but her mother was murdered like quite a few years back, and that was like an unsolved crime. So we're following that throughout the whole series, but then we're also following like little murders and crimes on the side as well. I believe that everything does end up coming together in the last book. Like all the little crimes do mean something for like the bigger thing that we're trying to work out. I did enjoy this. Like you literally cannot go wrong with a little mystery thriller. I ended up giving this one 4 stars as well. Then we have my only 5-star read of the month. We have Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. This is technically the third book in like a little interconnected standalone series, and I now understand why people told me to read Part of Your World and Yours Truly before reading this one, because this would not have meant as much to me if I hadn't read those 2 books. So take this as your sign to read those before you even think about picking this one up. I promise you, it makes it all so much more worth it. This is following Emma and Justin, and at the start of the book, Justin posts on this like Reddit thread saying that every single time he dates a girl, she breaks up with him and then ends up finding her soulmate afterwards. And Emma finds this Reddit post and she ends up contacting him because she has this same thing. So they pretty much make this plan that they're going to counteract each other's curses by fake dating each other, and then they will go off to find their soulmates once they break up. But there is so much more to this book. Like that sounds like it's going to be like a cutesy little rom-com, whereas this book is so deep. There is a lot of trigger warnings in this book, so definitely look those up. I just think this was such a beautiful story. It showed so much about hope as well, and it just felt so real. Like the characters in this book felt so real, and the problems they were going through felt so real. And I personally can't relate to any of the issues in this book, which I'm very grateful for. But I just think this book was so beautifully done. I definitely understand why people have cried in this book and why people get emotional in this book. The next book I read, this is actually the last like physical book I have, and then I read 2 more on my Kindle. So I read Catching Fire by Susan Collins, which is obviously the second book in the Hunger Games series. Obviously this specific edition doesn't have a title on the front, but I love this edition so much. This is actually the edition that I did read. I think everyone knows the Hunger Games by now. Like I don't really need to give it an introduction. I don't really need to explain anything. I think everyone knows the premise of the story. story and the world. And most of you have probably already watched the movies. I've watched the movies before reading these, so I'm sure you already know, but I won't say any spoilers just in case. The second Hunger Games movie, Catching Fire, is actually my favourite out of the series, so I was very excited to read this one because I just knew that I was gonna love it. Like, it was just a very easy read. I will say the only thing that I didn't like about this that I felt was a little bit different to the movie is that it wasn't until about 60% of the way through the book that we actually went into the games, and so I found like the first half of this book quite boring because I just feel like nothing was really happening. And I know it was important to the world building and like all the background stuff, but I just feel like the games could have started a lot earlier. I feel like in the movie it's a lot more fast paced, but definitely preferred the movie a little bit more just because of that, but I still ended up giving this 4 stars as well. Now on to the 2 books that I read on my Kindle. So pretty much at the start of the year, Amazon released these Amazon original books, and it was a series of novellas for Valentine's Day, and they did the same thing with little Christmas novellas. So I believe there was 5 of them that were released, but I only ended up reading 2 of them, and I'll explain why. So the first one was called Cruel Winter with You, and that one was by Ali Hazelwood. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. As I said, it is a little novella, so it's probably around like 50 to 70 pages, so there's really not that much to it. But considering I don't really like Ali Hazelwood's writing, I was actually pleasantly surprised by this one. I did quite enjoy it. Can't go wrong with a little novella, like it's very easy to read. And then the second one is Merry Ever After, and I actually gave this one 1 star. This book turned me off reading any other book in this series, and technically I did try to read the third, but I got like 10 pages in and like DNF'd it, but I wouldn't even consider it a DNF because I didn't even get like far enough in. But Merry Ever After, it was literally like the worst thing I've ever read. My review on Goodreads was just absolutely not. This whole novella was just an ick, and I honestly erased it out of my brain because I can't even remember why it was an ick, but they were the last 2 books that I read in December, so I just wanted to talk about them quickly. So overall, I feel like I had a very successful reading month actually. I feel like I haven't had a month with such a like high average rating in quite a while. I feel like most of these books I gave 4 stars and above, which literally unheard of for me, so I'm very happy with that. I cannot believe we are in 2025. Like, I have done 12 of these videos in 2024, and that is just absolutely insane to me because this is my first year being like consistent in my monthly wrap-ups and stuff like that, so I'm very proud of myself, honestly. But yeah, with all of that being said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Again, I hope you got some more recommendations out of this. Just a little reminder that I did also do the 12 days of Bookmas in December, so I've got a lot of recent videos up on my YouTube channel that you guys can go and watch if you're interested in. But with all that being said, thank you again so much for watching, and I will hopefully see you in my next one.